Good morning, everybody. Dr. Todd Williams joining you here this morning live on Facebook. Coming to a city somewhere near you in 2024. I'm glad you could join me this morning. I appreciate everybody that's been reaching out to me, asking where are you, and missing your teachings. Here I am. So, my wife had been teaching for the last month here at our Household of Faith at Beyond Church, and I'm really appreciative of her ability to expound on the Word of God and teach us some principles about life for the whole month of January. I don't know the last time I had a month off from teaching. It's been a long time in the last 20 or so years, but it was good for me. And it was good for everybody here in our Household of Faith. Sorry we didn't broadcast those. If y'all can help me out and share this. And hopefully everyone will get the notifications that I am live this morning. A lot of people are asking me if I was going to be teaching today. And of course I am. So I'm going to be talking to you about self-discipline. This is something that I set on course late last year to begin to seek out and study about self-discipline. This is going to be part one, Lord willing, of I don't know how many parts. I have pages and pages of notes concerning this, of what I've been writing down that I sensed the Holy Spirit was speaking to me about self-discipline for 2024. I know that I'm in a personal transition. This Household of Faith is in a personal transition. I sensed the Lord beginning to send me out, so that's why I said I'll probably be coming to a city somewhere near you in 2024 in the United States. This is the first time that I've sensed the Holy Spirit leading me to go on a road trip, and there's many of you that God's put on my heart to come and visit and spend some time with you personally. So that will be happening soon. With that being said, things within our Household of Faith here in South Carolina will be shifting. So everybody should be prepared here in the Household of Faith that things are changing and will be changing, and will be changing throughout 2024 and into 2025. I know one thing. If you get an instruction from God, don't expect a second instruction until you fulfill the first instruction. And somebody may ask me, well, what's next? Well, I won't know that until I obey the first instruction. God doesn't have to explain himself any further than the first instruction that he's given you. And that's the end of that. So this morning, we read from Luke chapter 9. Luke chapter 9, right? Does anybody remember what Luke chapter 9 said? Say that real loud for everybody, Joy.
If anyone desires to follow Jesus, deny himself and take up his cross daily to follow him.
All right, thank you. So Luke 9:32, Jesus put some parameters to us following him. He put some parameters to us following him. This is something that we have to adhere to. I've asked the question in the past, is it enough to just believe in Jesus? Is it enough to just believe in Jesus? I ask you that question. Is it enough to just believe in Jesus? Sherry is shaking her head no. Is it enough to just believe in Jesus? How many of you believe in Jesus? I believe. The greater question becomes what that believing has to produce in my life. Now, Jesus is not talking to newcomers here in Luke 9:32. Let's read it one more time. Luke 9:23, I'm sorry. Luke 9:23, he said unto how many people?
All.
He said to all. He didn't exclude anybody. He said to everyone present. He said to them all, if any man comes after me, if any man will, pay attention to that word, will. This is an issue of will. If any man will come after me, you have to have your will in this. You have to have your want to in this. When Jesus began to beckon my heart to follow him, the thing that was standing in the way was my will. I had every kind of excuse. Well, God, there's no need in me following you because I'm going to do this. God, there's no need in me doing this because I've got sin planned in my future. How many of you have been were planners of sin? I planned out my sin. I don't know about y'all, but I had plans to sin. That was my future. That's what I was desiring to do. But yet at the same time, God is beckoning me to follow him. I have people now that believe that I may have swerved from the truth and they think that God's done with me. I'm like, I'm more open to him now than I ever was. There was a time in my life when I was not open to him and he was still beckoning to me. Why would he discard me now when my heart is now open to him? I wasn't open to him. He said, if any man will come after me. Here's the parameters to it. Because there's all kind of people out here that believe that just believing Jesus and believing in Jesus, that everything's going to be okay. Well, James has this thing that he tells us that even the devils believe. And they're not the inheritors of salvation. Now, I will say to you that faith is the door by which we enter in. Faith is the door by which we enter in. And it is by grace through faith that we are saved. But I found in my encounter with Jesus that he was not just wanting me to believe in him. He was wanting me to follow after him. He was wanting me to come after him. Are you hearing me? Yes. There's a vast difference in the switch that happens when God is pursuing you until you have to begin pursuing him. We become the pursuer. He initiates, and then we become the pursuer. Are you following me? If any man will come after me, the first parameter, he says, is let him deny himself. Let him deny himself. The first time I ever read this verse of scripture, it was very confusing to me. I was like, how do I deny myself? Myself and my self-impulses are the strongest thing that I know. How do I deny myself? Well, let's look on further. What does Jesus say? That's step one. Then he says, and take up his cross daily. I don't think you can get to second base without going to first base. He says, let him deny himself, and then it's a progression, and take up his cross daily. And he goes on and says, and follow me. I believe a lot of us have not arrived at the place of following Jesus because we haven't first arrived at the place of denying self. With that said, thank you for joining me this morning. Here's a worksheet. I'm giving you instruction as this passes around. If you'd like a copy of this worksheet. Good morning, Diana. Thank you for joining me. See who else is with me. Mac, thank you for joining. I see you up there in the corner. Anybody else that's joining me, thank you for being here this morning. If you want a copy of my notes, you can email me at gobeyondchurch@gmail.com. And I will send you a copy of this. gobeyondchurch@gmail.com. Somebody help me out and put that in the chat stream for me if anybody. That's at gmail.com. I'll see you, make sure everybody gets a copy. You do need something to write with. And like I said, we're under a transition while everybody's getting that Here's your first instruction with this. Only look at the box at the first that says exercise 1. Do not read anything else. I don't want you to get misled or begin to derive your own ideas about things at this point. I want you to look at exercise number 1 on your sheet. I'm talking to you about self-discipline. This is part 1. I'm going to be talking to you about dedication and self-image this morning. On exercise number 1, and you that don't have the sheet is following me on Facebook here, I want you to measure your dedication to God from 0 to 100. I want you to measure your dedication to God. If you were to measure it from 0, that means I have no dedication to God, to 100 means I am completely sold out. I'm His 100%. There's nothing else. I want you to put a number, and if you're not on this number line, if 0 doesn't fit, if 0 fits you, circle it. If 50% fits you, circle it. If 100% fits you, circle it. If one of those numbers doesn't, I want you to write in a number on that gauge right here at the top, and you put a number to it. 0 to 100, right? How dedicated are you to God? This is not a trick question. This is something that you need to answer truthfully for yourself. This is not something that I'm going to ask you, what's your number? If you think I'm 87% dedicated to God, then put 87%. If you say I'm dedicated to God one day out of the week, then you do the math and figure it out. All right? So while y'all are contemplating that, I'll talk to my Facebook people. Just think about that for just a minute. Like I said, there's a lot of transition happening in our household of faith. I haven't been on it since 2023. This is my first time speaking this year for 2024. I was very appreciative of my wife. The Lord had laid on her heart to teach out of the 7 churches in Revelation, and tickled my heart, made me glad. I'm in the midst of a transition out of one phase of ministry into another. I know going into 2024, I sense the Lord tell me it's time for you to move. It's time for you to move and travel. And that's my plans for 2024. I'm talking that over currently with my wife, and I will be traveling the country this year. So I will more likely be coming to a city somewhere near you in the U.S. If so, I hope I can meet you. And I'm looking forward to that. So praise God, He's moving us forward. I believe He's got a lot of changes in mind for us for 2024 and 2025. Let's go back to our sheet. Exercise number 1. Where did you answer it at? I'm not asking you to say it out loud unless you want to. How dedicated are you to God? How dedicated are you to God? See, like number 1, numero uno, or does God get, second place or leftovers or shoved off to the corner and maybe later? How about you? Search your hearts. Sometimes the only way you can arrive at the truth is to search your heart. Sometimes the right questions have got to be asked in order for you to discover the location of where you are. Many times we become lost in our way, even in following Jesus. Don't tell me it doesn't happen. We just went through the 7 churches. 5 out of those 7 churches, Jesus said they needed to repent. There was something that needed to change in their life or in their mind. Something that needed to change in their thinking. Some of them had wrong doctrine, wrong thinking, wrong philosophies. They were lukewarm. The list goes on and on. What about you? If the state of the church, I want to ask you all a question in this room and everyone listening to me. If the state of the church depended upon you, then what would be the state of the church? How do you treat the gathering together of the church? How do you represent Jesus? Think about it. If the weight and responsibility of it all, if you all of a sudden became the pastor of Beyond Church, what would it begin to look like? You don't know what God has in your future. You don't know that God may put you over this fellowship at some point soon. The Bible tells us that we're to be ready in season and out of season. I'm glad somebody's been reading the Bible. We're to be ready in season and out of season. That means that it may not be convenient for me. Out of season means it's not at a convenient time, God. I mean, God's calling me to leave town, and I just opened a business. I'm like, this don't seem like a convenient time. That's kind of challenging, God. I'm going to have to shut the door and lock it. You know what that's going to require of me? Faith. Faith that God's going to pay the bills. Faith that God's going to do it when I'm not there. It's not always at a convenient time. So look on your exercise number 1. I'll go ahead and tell you, there is a right answer. And if you didn't answer 100, then I'm going to tell you the honest truth about this that maybe nobody else will. If you're not 100% dedicated to God, then you're never going to be successful at it. You're never going to walk successfully. I've had people tell me, I did prison ministry for 6 years, and I had a guy tell me one night, I cannot follow Jesus outside of these bars. I said, then this is the best place for you to stay. You need to stay in jail the rest of your life, because it'd be better for you to live and die in this jail than to go out there and die and go to hell. He said, outside of these bars, I'm an animal. When I get outside of these bars, I can't control myself. He said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I said, well, at least you know. You have to be 100% dedicated to anything for it to be successful. If you're not dedicated to your marriage, it's not going to be successful. If you're not dedicated to your business, it's not going to be successful. Anything that you're not dedicated to, you'll never succeed at. Let's move forward. Looking on your sheet this morning, dedication requires the discipline of sacrifice. I'm covering this first. This was actually at the end of my notes. I've got pages and pages of notes that I've been taking on this. And I felt like God told me to start with the last first. Dedication requires the discipline of sacrifice. We just talked about, just a minute ago in worship, bringing the sacrifice of praise. We had a great time in worship. So what is this thing, discipline, that I'm talking to you about? First point on your page this morning you'll see is that discipline is a macro view of your future with delayed gratification. I'm going to begin to answer for you and define what is self-discipline over the next several weeks. What is self-discipline? What is self-discipline? I can go ahead and tell you. The first thing it is a macro view of your life and your future. It's when you can step back and not look at just today. Jesus said if you were going to follow him, you had to deny yourself and take up your cross daily. That's a micro view. That's, I got to deal with today. But the first part that he covered was in denying yourself, and that's taking on a macro view. The big picture, in other words. If I continue this behavior, where will I be in the next 5 years? If I continue this behavior, where will I be in the next 10 years? A lot of times people can't figure out why they are where they are and how they arrived at where they are. It is because many times they couldn't grab the big picture. You know, they can't see the forest for the trees, right? the macro view of your future with delayed gratification. Somebody say that with me. Delayed gratification.
Delayed gratification.
We live in a world that is living for the moment. How I feel at this moment. Feelings seem to be the guiding principle of people now. I feel like a woman. I feel like a man. Everything is about the feelings now. I feel offended. Everything is based out of feelings. Nobody makes intelligent, listen to me very closely on this, no one makes intelligent decisions about their future when they're based on their present feelings. Amen. You have to take sometimes a step back. This is part of self-discipline, taking a step back and evaluate things by the macro picture. Where is this going to lead me? Where is this going to take me? Moving forward here. Foolishness is defined by being impulsive when you have only a macro view of the now and the present. A fool cannot see beyond today. He can't see beyond a moment. He acts on impulse. Impulsive people act on the present. They act on the now. How I'm feeling about this moment. Self-discipline, I believe this is on your sheet. Self-discipline has an immediate reward. Well, this is where a lot of people don't understand about self-discipline. Self-discipline is a process of telling yourself no about certain things. No, I'm not going to do this. And I'll explain this in the weeks to come, how that self-discipline is twofold. One, it's either pushing something away from you, or two, it's pushing forward, like you're pushing uphill. Self-discipline is never going to be an easy task. Jesus didn't get to the point where he was saying, take up your cross daily, until he first said, you're going to have to deny yourself, because you will not have a right image or perspective of taking up a cross until you've dealt with yourself first. Are you hearing me? If you're going to follow Jesus, let me put this down and talk to everybody here and in here. If you're going to follow Jesus, then Jesus' first protocol to you is you're going to have to deal with yourself.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
You're going to have to deal with yourself. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I'm not the easiest person to deal with. It's always easier to deal with everybody else's junk but your own. It's always easier to see everybody else's faults but your own. Jesus had to deal with this over and over through Scripture. He's talking about, stop trying to get the plank out of somebody, a speck out of somebody else's eye when you got a plank in your own. What's he saying? You got more junk than they got, but how is it you can see their junk, but you can't deal with your own? Go deal with your own, and then come back. If you hadn't dealt with your junk, then be quiet. The sad part about most people's junk is not self-evident to them. You have to take a good look at self. You hear what I'm saying? If you're going to follow Jesus, I'm talking about something beyond just believing in Jesus. I'm now talking about you coming after him and following him. Because there's a lot of people believe in Jesus, but there wasn't many people that followed Jesus. John chapter 6 talks about from that day, many of them followed him no more. Because he's going to say the hard things. He's going to deal with the tough subjects. He's going to touch what you don't want touched. He's going to bring you to the crossroads where you say, I don't know which way to go. But you have to make a choice. The day of reckoning is at hand, the Bible says. What's going on here? Self-discipline does have an immediate reward. I don't want to paint this as, self-deprivation or you just beating yourself up. There is the immediate reward of self-discipline. of saying no to yourself. Let me say this, because at times self-discipline is going to be saying yes, but a lot of the times it's going to be saying no. All right? What do I get when I enact self-discipline? You like and respect yourself immediately. I said you like yourself and respect yourself immediately. I have noticed, I should be qualified enough to talk about this. I've had 5 children. Whenever I have brought discipline into my children's life, they seem to be happier. Did you hear what I just said? Here's a big point that you're going to have to understand about self-discipline. There's one person that you're going to have to live with the rest of your life, and it's you. You're going to have to live with you the rest of your life. From now on. So if you don't like yourself, you will never experience success. Let me say all that one more time for everybody that's listening in the back row. You're going to have to live with yourself the rest of your life. And if you don't like yourself, then you're going to have a very difficult time succeeding in life. Are you with me? Self-discipline helps us. I'm on your sheet now. Self-discipline helps us, number 1, to fill in the blank, grow. Self-discipline helps us to grow. Wouldn't you rather harness self-discipline than have to be disciplined?
Yes.
When the Bible talks about don't despise the chastening or the discipline of the Lord, because he disciplines every one of us because he loves us. But there's something greater in the mind of a father. I don't want to have to chase my sons around and say, hey, you need to be doing this. Hey, you need to do that. That becomes vexing to a father.
Yes, it does.
I'm always looking for, when is the light going to come on? When are they going to get a clue? When is this going to stop being a mystery to them? And harness some self-discipline. Do it yourself. Why do I have to keep telling you? I mean, I find through the scripture God repeating many times the same things. But there comes a point when maturity has to be harnessed and you begin to make self-disciplined decisions for yourself. That's called growing up. Everybody good with that? Everybody, that's growing up. You know, I'm almost 51 years old. My mama ain't having to call me and say, did you pay the power bill? You need some money for it? No. That doesn't even cross her mind. Why? She doesn't have to think about those things because I have attained a certain maturity to become self-sufficient. The Bible talks about that we're to be self-sufficient, right?
Right.
The second thing that self-discipline helps me is grow to like ourself. Now, Jesus said to love your neighbor as yourself. A lot of times people can't love their neighbor because they don't love themselves. It's amazing. Don't let that go in the wrong direction, because the Bible does talk about people who are lovers of self, but that means that they love pleasure. He goes on in defining that. They are always looking for sensation, the next impulse they're going to act on, and how it makes them feel. I have to come to terms with myself. Part of following Jesus is part of understanding who I am as well. And developing self-identity. That's why I'm talking to you this morning about self-discipline and how it affects my self-image. So it helps me to grow, and it helps me to grow to like myself. I'll cover some more on that in just a second. Just hold that thought. Because here's what I've discovered in my 30 years of following Jesus and my interaction with human beings. I've done counseling on, y'all wouldn't believe it. The counseling center used to send people to a church, and I did free counseling for people. Boy, if I could tell you some of the stories. Ooh, Lord have mercy. People who live undisciplined lives, I have found that they tend to dislike themselves.
Yeah.
Or either they loathe life. Or either they are difficult to live with. 3 things I just gave you. They either dislike themselves, they loathe life, or either they're very difficult to live with. Now, it's interesting, we were just having this conversation before all of y'all arrived this morning as me and my family. And I don't remember how we got on the topic, but I said, well, we're all difficult to live with in some capacity. And April said, well, some people are easier to live with than others. Some people are difficult to live with.
Mm-hmm.
Some people I'm glad I don't have to live with them.
Amen.
Some people I'm glad they got their own house and don't live with me. Because it would be friction city. Difficult people typically are undisciplined people. Their lives are difficult. Their emotional state is difficult. They're difficult to get along with. Because more than likely, somewhere in their lives is undisciplined patterns. I'm trying to help you here this morning. That's what people wind up with, self-hatred. You know, we live in a generation, I'm not trying to knock you or anything that you do, but I have dealt with people on the level of self-hatred. I've seen people that have piercings all over, tattooed all over. And when I look at them, I see the product of self-hatred. Now, that's not 100% true, okay? But most of the time, 9 times out of 10, when I've dealt with a person like that, when I begin digging into what's going on in their life, I will immediately uncover self-hatred. People that abuse themselves, cut themselves. Somewhere inside, they dislike themselves to the point where it's self-hatred. Stay with me this morning. All of that comes from a product of a lack of discipline. Hold on to that. I didn't say self-discipline, a lack of discipline. I found that people that came from, backgrounds and situations where there wasn't a lot of discipline, a lot of parameters for them, they wind up self-hating. Because they will begin to develop inside of them psychologically the thought that nobody cared enough to tell me no. Nobody cared enough to tell me when I'm wrong. And they have to discover it for themselves, and their experiences wind up being cruel teachers of pain. I hope you got that. I hope you caught that. On the other end of this, self-discipline produces happiness. Some people say, well, I'm just not happy. I'm not happy with life. I'm not happy with you. I'm not happy in this marriage. I'm not happy with my job. I'm not happy with my situation, whatever it is. Happiness, first of all, is a human choice. It's something that I take control of and harness for myself. I don't look for anything external. Y'all get me on this. I don't look for anything external to make me happy, or anyone externally. Happiness is a product of self-discipline. Jesus said, if you're going to come after me, you're going to have to, in other words, you're going to have to deal with yourself. Because your biggest stumbling block to following Jesus is, it's me. Not me, but you. Or you know what I mean.
know.
I've seen people go around trying to blame the devil on everything. I'm like, the devil ain't got to do nothing. You're such a mess.
Yes.
Internally, then all he got to do is sit back and just watch you on self-destruction. He don't even have to get involved anymore.
That's right.
So self-discipline produces happiness. When, let me finish. Go on, I'm at the first arrow on your sheet. When you force yourself to not do what's fun, what's easy, and what's convenient. So I'm covering the knots of self-discipline. We look for fun. We look for what's easy.
Oh, yeah.
We look for what's convenient. We look for what's in the moment. What's going to bring me pleasure in the moment. Let me go ahead and tell you here, because I know spiritual people get frustrated. There are people within the church, I'll say, and this is a broad term when I say church, they're frustrated at the lack of commitment and dedication and heart. You know, it's like when Jesus addressed the church at Laodicea, he said, you're lukewarm. He said, I wish you were cold or I wish you was hot. Choose one or the other. He said, I would that you were zealous or hot. But because you're lukewarm, he said, I'm just going to spit you out. I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. There's a certain frustration that you hear in Jesus' voice in dealing with people who are at that 50% or, you hear what I'm saying? If they're not 100% in, you frustrate God. And Paul said, God forbid that I frustrate his grace. Some people don't believe it. I mean, you ever had a kid that you get frustrated with?
Yeah.
No?
A few.
Okay, maybe y'all hadn't parented enough children.
All of them.
All of them.
And other people.
Now, some people don't believe that sweet Jesus can get frustrated, and you ain't read much of the Bible. Yeah. In other words, Jesus is telling you that when you decide you're going to follow me, you're not going to be able to choose what's fun, what's easy, or what's convenient. And it ain't always going to make sense to you. And let me go ahead and explain something to you if you haven't gotten that part yet. Most of the time, he won't explain it to you, and he doesn't have to. I've had God over and over give me an instruction in life with no explanation. And I'm sitting there in my mind thinking, I don't understand. I don't understand. Well, he's already told you in Proverbs you can't lean to your own understanding. But in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. All right? I know this is an exciting topic. So what am I doing then? I'm doing what's right. I do what's right, and from that point, your self-esteem goes up. I do what's right because it's right.
Amen.
Because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly. And not just because anybody's looking. Some people only do what's right when somebody else is looking.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on here. We're almost to exercise number 2. Your self-image and your self-talk are very, very important.
Amen.
Your self-image and your self-talk, how you talk to yourself. Because everybody in this room talks to yourself. Don't tell me that you don't. Some of you just talk out loud to yourself. But there's a conversation going on in your head. I hear people. I hear you sometimes. What are you over here talking about? How you see yourself internally will eventually be displayed externally. And that's my point. That's why I say I can see somebody, and I ain't sitting there saying that I ain't beating up people with tattoos and earrings, and I ain't even talking about that. Listen, I used to be in the heavy metal band. I'd go to places. I've seen people that had both nostrils pierced, their lips, their eyebrows, their chin, their ears, and then had chains hanging in with it from a cinder block, walking around, and it was pulling all their face down. I was like, wow, I would hate to be walking around with a cinder block chained to my nose, lips, ears, and there too. They had the nipple piercing. I just said it. Yeah, I was like, wow.
That's extreme.
That is an extreme case. But if I sat down and had a conversation with that person, it probably wouldn't take long for me to discover that they have a lot of self-hatred on the inside. It's being displayed now externally. And don't think that just because that is an extreme case that you are immune to it. I see people walk around slumped over.
Yeah. All the time.
I see people that when they engage you in conversation won't look you in the eyes. When I talk to somebody, I look them in the eye. I've met people it'll remain nameless, but somebody brought somebody to my attention. I said, well, I want to meet them. As soon as I met the person, they would never look me in the eyes. And I said, there's something wrong. There's something going on there. Now, I ain't sitting there trying to psychoanalyze people all the time, but there are things that become evident to you.
Right.
It's like people that'll look over you. They're just displaying externally what's going on internally. People's body language will tell you a whole lot more about them than their words will. I mean, the Bible even tells you that in laughter, the heart can be sorrowful. How people are talking to themselves in their head. How they view themselves. This is why Jesus said you're going to have to deal with self first. You got to deal with self. So let's look on exercise number 2. Thank you, everybody that's still with me. Good morning. Diana said the Holy Spirit does the same way. Gives me instructions without explanations quite a bit. I only struggle sometimes with a delayed obedience. Hey, good morning, Jingo. Thank you for joining me. Let's look at exercise number 2. I want you to do this. Do you like yourself? A scale of 1 to 10. Do you like yourself? I didn't give you a 0 to choose from here. You got a 1. If you like yourself on that basis, you got a 1, a 5, and a 10. I mean, if you answer 10, then that means, man, I would never want to be anybody else. I am me. I embrace myself, whatever. Do you like yourself? Ask yourself that question in a truthful manner. Do you like yourself? Did anybody answer above or anybody answer below a 5? Anybody? I don't want to embarrass yourself, it's all right. Then tell me 3 things that you do like about yourself. List them real quick. 3 things that you like about yourself. If you're following along with me, write it down on a sheet of paper. What are 3 things that you like about yourself? They can be anything. You might like the way you smile. You might like the way you brush your teeth. You might like the way your hair looks. In my case, what does it say in Chauncey? God, it wasn't fair. Some he gave brains, others he gave hair.
That's right. I like the way you talk.
Y'all got 3 things?
Oh, yeah.
3 things you like about yourself. And I put one little line down here that says, what do you dislike about yourself? What do you dislike about yourself? See, sometimes you need to have a conversation with yourself before you try to move on in having a conversation with God. Now, I just said something that a lot of people would be like, what did he just say? Yeah, I just said that. There are times that you need to have a conversation with yourself before you're trying to move on to talking to God about something. David said that he pondered his own heart while he laid in his bed at night. You need to think about yourself. See, I was left with a question a long time ago when I first began following Jesus. How can he love me when I don't love me?
Exactly.
Did you catch that? How can he love me? See, I couldn't believe that God loved me because I didn't love me. Are you greater than him? Because that gets in the way. What gets in the way is my self-image, who I believe myself to be. Here's the sad reality to a lot of this. Let me talk to y'all frankly for a moment. A lot of Christian people don't get this. They don't get this. I encountered, I live in the Bible Belt, the South, and I encountered people all the time that were church-going people. And they didn't know how to deal with me in my before Christ days. I would get these statements. Why don't you cut your hair? That's back when I had real long hair. Why don't you cut your hair and come to church with me? Or I would have, T-shirts on with skulls being ripped apart and they would say, why don't you, let me buy that T-shirt off of you and I can make rags out of it. And then you can come to church with me. Now, you know what I was thinking? You're trying to deal with what I have externally, and you'll never get in here.
Exactly.
Never. When you try to deal with what somebody is exhibiting externally, you're closing their heart. I said you're closing their heart. I looked like hell on the outside because I was hell on the inside. And you ain't going to deal with the outside until the inside is dealt with. All of the same people never had a conversation with me about Jesus. They didn't talk to me about Jesus. They talked to me about what was evident to them and what was offensive to them. And I had to get rid of all of this to come to their little meeting. You know what I thought inside? The only thing I like about myself is my hair. And if I got to get rid of this to come to your little meeting, I don't think I really want to come. Internally, I was flipping them off. Hey.
Heard all that before too.
But the first person that actually encountered me, and despite all of what I looked like, talked like, y'all don't know my language. I offended sinners with my language. They were like, do you not know any other words? No. I had two main words I used. The GD and the F word. And they were all in sequence with each other. In between the other words. I could take a 7-word sentence and turn it into a 20-word sentence. But the first person that could cut through all of that, and they just came to me and started talking to me about Jesus. It was like, and I was like, I ain't never heard this before. This is a new doctrine. Nobody had to convince me that I was an undisciplined person. Nobody had to convince me that I hated myself. I knew that. I hated myself and tried to drink myself and drug myself to death so that I didn't have to deal with myself. That's the reality of so many people that they're dealing with. I see people more and more sitting on the sidewalks, sitting on the streets, and it ain't doing nothing but increasing. And I live in a small town, but I'm seeing them more and more and more, strung out.
Yep.
I watch them from my front view of my store across the street. Just people, I mean, they are out of their minds tweaking. I watched a guy dance for over an hour and a half out there in the parking lot with no music. They come in my store and can't control themselves, can't control their body functions. They're trying to medicate the pain away.
That's right.
Christian people need to get an understanding. They're not interested in singing your worship song. They're not interested in coming to a little meeting. They are interested in fitting in somewhere. But you're going to have to drop how you treat them and what they're showing and exhibiting. I ain't trying to fix people. That's the last thing I want to be, is a fixer. I will be a father to people. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if I'm going to be a father to you, then you better listen to what I'm telling you. You need to get some self-discipline. Self-discipline is something you learn. It's a learned behavior. Write that in on your sheet. I had a sheet somewhere. What did I do with it, Chauncey? Oh, here it is. It's learned. That's on check. Check number 2. Self-discipline is a learned, write it in, habit. It's a habit. What does Dr. Christ used to always say?
What you look at, the strongest becomes the strongest.
No, not that one. Your habits will carry you further than your desires. Sorry.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
Your habits will carry you further than your desires. I hear all kind of people say, I got a desire to do this and I got a desire to do that and I want to be this and I want to do that. But you'll never get there when you have the wrong habits. I want to be in good health. When do you want to change your habits?
Exactly.
Well, I want to have money and get out of debt. Do you want to change your habits?
Exactly.
That's the difference in people, is their habits. Whatever you do twice can become a habit if you keep doing it. Any bad habit that you've developed is you chose to do it more than once. And now it's a bad habit. And bad habits are hard to get rid of. But you can do it. It's all a matter if any man will. This is a matter of will. Your will's got to get involved. Don't run off yet. Because that's the difference in successful people. People that are successful in life, it's all because of habits. You don't have to be real smart. You don't have to be the most intelligent. I've watched people that they would have never been voted most likely to succeed in school, but succeeded more than all the others. Why? Because they had better habits. That's it. You know, there are dumb people that become millionaires. They're dumb. They're pretty dumb. But a lot of them just have right habits. In other words, it's not about how intelligent you are. Wealthy people develop right habits. Godly people, they do what? They develop godly habits, right? Moving on. Look on the first ticking time bomb on your page, and we're wrapping this to a close. It says on here, the human tendency to slip. All of us have a human tendency to slip. So listen closely with me here for just a minute. Jingo said, come on, Papa. One thing common to all humans is we have the tendency to slip back. I'm going to lean into y'all this morning on this one. No matter how far any person progresses in life, there is always the tendency to slip back. If you stop the habits that have made you successful, you will slip backwards. It's that simple. Whatever you've done to get you to the right place or the right point in life, if you stop doing those things, it's a natural progression. Years ago, I taught this message about keeping your paddle in the water. You cannot drift. In today's world, the world has changed. The world has changed vastly in the last 40 to 50 years. I tell my kids what normals were when I was growing up, and they are vastly different. The world has changed drastically. Let me go ahead and tell you. When I was growing up, there was no convenience stores open on Sunday. If you didn't get gas on Saturday, sorry, you wasn't getting gas on Sunday.
Or to eat.
You didn't see people out doing yard work or anything else like that on Sunday. If you did, oh my God, this is a major heathen. We used to see a man cutting his grass on Sunday, and we were like, oh, well, he owns a liquor store. I'm saying, you couldn't buy alcohol on Sunday. The convenience store wasn't open, right? The world has changed. I could go further and further with that. But once people stop doing the habits that have made them successful, they naturally begin to slip back into where they came. You can't ever take your paddle out of the water and think, well, I'll just coast or drift here. Sorry, it ain't working. It ain't happening. Yeah, April said it right. The tide's too strong. The tide of the world is causing people to be carried away into places they would have never imagined. You think that people that wind up in child pornography just wound up there? No. Go read about Ted Bundy and see how he wound up becoming a serial killer. He said it all started with porn. He said that. That's where it started. See, where something starts is not where it finishes. There's a way that seems right to man, but the end thereof is death. That's why you can't do what's fun or what's easy or what's convenient. You know what would have been convenient for me today? It would be to stay in the bed. That would have been what's easy. This doesn't come with ease. I'm not just sitting around here talking because I need something to talk about. No. I've never been a talkative person. When I got married, my wife said, do you ever talk? And I said, but doesn't God have a sense of humor? He'll put you to talking. I call it the skip and slip. If you skip, you will begin to slip. If you skip church, you will slip. If you skip work, you will slip. If you skip exercise, you will slip.
That's right.
Who in here thinks that it's really fun to feel pain in your muscles when you're working out, especially the next day? You think that's fun? Oh, I'm hurt. The older I get, it's like, I get pain. My kids say things, I'm like, I get pains, and I didn't even do anything.
Just turn around.
I just got out of bed and something hurt.
Sleep roll.
Vladimir Horowitz, who was a great pianist, said this: if I skip practice one day, I notice. If I skip practice 2 days, my wife notices. If I skip practice 3 days, the world will notice.
Wow.
You can't let up. Self-discipline is a battle. It is a battle. I'm not going to tell you that it doesn't come with hardship and war and battle, but I'm battling myself. And this is a battle that I have to win for myself against myself. Did you get that?
Yes.
Nobody else can win this battle for you except you. Jesus said, if any man's going to come after me, he's going to have to deny himself. You got to deal with yourself. Don't even get to the point of taking up the cross and following him. Let's deal with yourself. This last 30 years of following Jesus, I started following Jesus in 1994. That seems like yesterday to me. But this has been a constant process of dealing with myself and being open to hear what he has to say about myself. This is the most important battle that you have going on. I see people, it used to just astound me. They always battling the devil and always doing some spiritual warfare. Honey, you need to go to war with yourself. Because you can't be binding principalities but can't stop your mouth from gossiping.
Amen. Preach.
That's why they won't let me in a lot of pulpits in America. Because I'm going to say things like that. Because people are trying to have some spiritual enigma, but they have their self-consciousness is an enigma to them. They can't even deal with themselves. Do you reach a place of self-mastery? Obviously so, or Jesus wouldn't have brought this up as a topic point. I know one thing, I ain't dealing with the stuff that I used to be dealing with. I ain't dealing with the junk that I used to be doing. You know, you will keep carrying around your baggage until you stop and decide to start unpacking it and get some people around you that you say, hey, I don't know what to do with this. Can you help me unpack this bag? Because I had a lot of baggage. Deny self. Is that on your sheet? Where are we at on here? I'm at the little book. Self-mastery is based on the concept and the principle of self-denial. Does Jesus expect you to master yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yes, he does.
Oh, yeah. Then how far along in that self-mastery are you? Because part of following him is dealing with you. I shouldn't be dealing with the same hang-ups that I was dealing with 10 and 20 years ago. It's part of growing up. I've heard people say, well, you know, I just cuss a little bit. And God knows my heart. He understands. Okay. I let some slip too. And I'm being transparent.
Amen.
And sometimes I think a whole lot more of them than I say.
That's
But there's a difference
Yeah.
between what I think and what comes out of my mouth.
Discipline.
That's self-discipline.
And there's some in times that I have to go and just go run away. But honey, I don't talk like I used to.
No.
Oh, if you'd have met me then. And somebody would have said, and he's going to preach the gospel. They'd have been like, yeah. I ain't dealing with what I used to be dealing with because this is a progressive growth in having to deal with myself. There comes the point of getting that cross on the shoulder. If you think you're going to be able to bear that cross and haven't dealt with yourself, This is the walk. Did you know that this is what Christianity used to be called? The walk. They were first called Christians in Antioch. Before that, it was just called the walk. Did y'all know that? The walk with Christ is a continuous series of not doing what I want or what I will to do until I develop a pattern of doing His will and His wants. I'm developing a pattern of not doing what I want to do and doing what He wants me to do. The walk. That's the beginning of living beyond yourself. Ultimately, that's what the cross is about. Jesus did not die so that you could live. He died so that you would die and live through Him. Last section down here at the bottom, and we're done. Self-discipline is the difference between having clear thinking, distracted thinking, and not thinking at all. And the ability to focus. I tell my children this all the time. I'm not asking you to do anything hard. I'm just asking you to think. Think. Dr. Christ used to say it this way: if you think twice, you'll be smarter than most people in your family. Right. Just think. Think about this. Think about what Jesus is saying. Think about what you need to deal with. Focus on this. Now, don't let it get you down, because all of us has got vices. All of us has got, bad habits or whatever. But you're going to have to get an aggression about you to attack them. Telling myself no. Nope, not going to do that. There are certain things that I love and enjoy. And a lot of them are surrounded around food. And I'll hear the Holy Spirit saying, why don't you fast today? Huh. That'll sound real fun. There was a time in my life where I was very attuned to this. And I weighed a whole lot less. Because I was on a regimen of self-discipline, and this was my fasting and eating regimen. I ate a day, fasted a day. Ate a day, fast 2 days. Ate a day, fast a day. Y'all get it? It was a 1-1-2-1, 1-1-2-1. So in some weeks, I ate 4 days. Some weeks, I ate 3 days. And I lived like that. The church don't talk about fasting. Jesus taught about fasting and praying. Praying seems a whole lot more easy than fasting. I can just talk to God. Hey, that's good. But now I got to push away from the table. When you go on a fast, because I'm talking to you about self-discipline. You wind up spending, you will realize if you go on an extended fast, I've been on extended fasts for 6 days, 10 days, 17 days, you will realize how much time you spend thinking about food, preparing food, eating the food, cleaning up from the food, and then getting ready for the next meal. And what you're going to eat for lunch. And that was just breakfast. Then you got lunch and dinner and snacks. And if you got children, they eat all the time. Yeah. And it's food. What am I going to eat? Eat. Jesus said life is more than eating and drinking and the clothes you're going to wear. But you never get to that point when you can't push away from your own appetites and impulses and actually, have you ever just sat in complete silence and try to find a place of complete silence and just thought for 30 minutes without anything? I ain't talking about praying. I ain't talking about reading your Bible. I'm talking about, listen to me, because a lot of people they can't ever hear the voice of God because they can't sit still long enough. It's a still, small voice. God's not going to scream at you. He's not going to yell at you. He does know how to get your attention. I've had people, I had a guy try to message me not long ago, and he said, God ain't going to speak to you no more till you give up this business. Message me on Messenger. And I said, you a liar. God led me to do it. Why would he now not speak to me? Because he led me to do it. I told him, I said, if God can speak to me when I was in the depth of sin, surely he can speak to me now.
Amen.
I'm not too far from God that he can't speak to me. Honey, if he can't get your attention through somebody's voice, then most of the time that's what he's going to use. I've had God talk to me audibly. In one time in 30 years. That's because my level of ignorance was way out there. Hopefully he ain't having to do that. Try to find a place this week for 30 minutes. Just do it once. I ain't asking you to start it tomorrow. Find a place. Just try to find a place where there ain't no noise. A place where there's utter silence. And then try to quiet your mind down.
It's hard.
That thing will be thinking, oh, you got to do this. You got to do that. Don't you want some coffee? I know you're thirsty. You got places to be. You got people to see. You got things to do. And it will just keep going on and on. And you know what you have to do? You have to say, be quiet. And it'll say, no. Now y'all listening to me. Listen to what I'm telling you. Your mind, you letting your mind just run feral. Mm-hmm. It's like a wild hog out there running around. It's rooting up everything.
That's the truth.
Good description.
But you know a hog can be domesticated? Smarter than a dog. You know, you can treat a dog bad and then put food in your hand. He'll still come to it. A hog won't do that. He'll remember for weeks on end, you slap me upside the head, I ain't going back to you. But you let go of him for 7 days and he will go right back to the way he used to be. And thus is how humans are too. You got to discipline that thing. I challenge you this week, find a quiet place for 30 minutes and just try to get your mind to be quiet to where you can actually, and get it to be quiet. Then you'll begin to think. You'll begin to think. Get it quiet first, and then let it start thinking. Hey, I love y'all. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Janie, Jingo. See who else is with me. Diana, thank you for staying with me. Stephen, Lillian, Amir, thank you. Pastor Lamonda, thank you. Appreciate everybody that's with me this morning. I look forward to this journey with you on self-discipline. This was part 1 this morning. How you view yourself is important. I think God wants you to like yourself because he loves you. But that doesn't mean, and he loves you. Thank you, Mac. Appreciate you being here. He loves me enough not to leave me the way I am. Thank God for that.
Amen to that.
I'll see y'all next Sunday, Lord willing. And maybe I'll see you soon this year. All right? Bye-bye.